Hello and welcome to the Tech on Toast podcast. My name's Chris Fletcher and I'm your host. Tech on Toast exists to connect hospitality to technology. Search for your best problem-solving tech on our marketplace, listen to both operators and tech experts on our podcast, or just meet up with the brilliant people who are helping innovate the hospitality industry as we enter a new era. Welcome to Tech on Toast. The Tech on Toast podcast is brought to you today by Rems Hospitality. Benchmark your restaurant across other venues securely and gain market share. To find out more about Rems, head over to their website, remshospitality.com. Enjoy the show. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Tech on Toast podcast. And this week, very lucky to be joined by Charles Gray, CRO at Paytronix. Charles, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for welcoming me to London. It's been a wonderful trip.
And obviously, people are already picking up on your accent. Where are you from, Charles?
Yes, I'm from the United States, just outside of Boston.
Very nice. Oh, I know the people at Toast very well.
Yes.
They grew out of Boston. Same for Paytronix, I presume.
Yes, we grew up out of Newton, which is just about 10 minutes outside of the city.
And we've welcomed you here today with some typical British weather. We have, well, you're a bit disappointed, aren't you? We've got fake snow.
Yeah, it is nothing like it is at home. I was actually looking forward to waking up when I saw the forecast last evening. I looked out and it was mostly rain. So I have to say it's been a very cold rain. So
yes,
I would want to switch over to the snow.
Yeah, we just don't do it properly. I'm sorry. On behalf of us, I apologise. But tell us a little bit about Paytronix and yourself, more importantly. What do you do at Paytronix?
So, I joined Paytronix about 2 years ago as the Chief Revenue Officer. My goal is to help expand Paytronix outside of the U.S. We've been a company for 22 years, working with the restaurant and convenience store space. My background is all restaurant operations and technology. So I was the vice president of IT for two publicly traded companies, took one of them public in the 1990s, helped expand brands like Boston Market and Einstein's in the U.S. And so throughout my career, I've spent really focused on hospitality, retail convenience space, and how technology intersects with the operations. So in joining Paytronix is really focused on being the guest experience company and really focusing on what's it like now that we're seeing a shift in, well, frankly, all behavior, right? The pandemic shifted so much about how we as consumers interact with our favorite brands. So, we went to QR codes where QR codes were supposed to be dead. Kiosks have made a resurgence. And I think in so many ways, other industries are informing how restaurants and retail will continue to evolve. So each one of us, the airlines have trained us in a certain behavior now. The rails have trained us in a certain behavior. We have their apps. We don't go queuing up for any of our tickets for the most part.
Thank God.
And so now restaurants and retail, and the joke around about the self-checkout and should I get an employee discount, if I'm checking myself out at the retail establishment. But we're going to see that trend continue to evolve here in the restaurant space as well. And some restaurants haven't fully gone back to the old methods before, and there's a blend out there, and I think that's where consumers are getting confused.
Really interesting. And we were talking about a brand before you came in the studio. Then I think you were triggered slightly. We were talking about experience you'd had in a brand in London today, and I think what you're seeing is quite common. I think it was a frustration, right? You were trying to order something and you were stuck in the loop of the tech, trying to get through your order, and I think that's possibly quite common from the back of the pandemic, with people buying off-the-shelf product or new off-the-shelf product and not really being tested out and then landing up in front of customers. Do you think that's quite common? Well, I mean, I'm hopefully getting less common, but is it quite common in your experience?
Yeah, I think there's a wave of tech that people grabbed because they had to, right?
Yeah.
In the moment. Some of it's working for them, some of it's not. And they're trying to figure out what the balance should be. Particularly in restaurants, for so many years, the point of sale, the EPOS, was the hub of that interaction. And what I think we're starting to see is the consumer-facing, the customer products like online ordering, kiosk, even this experience with the QR code that I had, they need to be seamless. And sometimes if you don't think through the stack and how the person's going to interact with it, that's been a challenge for so many years in a table service environment. You order, and someone goes back, your server goes back, and they interpret what you just said, and they'll punch in knowing how to use the system.
Yeah.
It's common in counter service, right? You could walk up at a KFC and you'll order one way. I may order the other. I may order by using the combo number. you'll go up and say, I want the chicken sandwich, whatever. And that, again, there's a human being that's employed by that brand to interpret what you just said. Well, now you don't have anyone trained.
Yeah.
You as a consumer come in and I've got this complex menu. How do I present it?
Yeah.
So that I can still get what I was looking for?
Yeah.
Or the options and
I think it's been thought through really well. I mean, it's a detailed job, right, to do it actually properly. I think there's quite a lot of push and pull between the brand and the tech supplier. But I think some of the brands have done it excellently, and then obviously there's the others that you've experienced today that are on a journey. And tell me, what does Paytronix actually? So you've got you're coming into the UK, and I think you're working with NFS Technology. Our friend Chris is outside the studio here today with us. What does it look like for the UK for you? What's the plan? So
we've been helping Nando's for over 10 years with their loyalty program, which is very familiar, I think, to most people here in the UK.
We're all Nando's fans.
Yes, we are too. And then recently, within the last year, we started working with Five Guys as well here in helping them think through their gift card and electronic gift card strategies. So for us, the UK is a natural fit because we've been here. We just haven't expanded our market share. And we're looking toward NFS and really how we can work together with their experience and their knowledge of the marketplace locally, because there's so many commonalities, again, in consumer behavior. I don't think there's a particularly UK-US slant to this.
I was going to ask, do you have a view on that? Because obviously everyone will be interested to hear your opinion.
Well, I think in some ways, I'll tell you, you're slightly ahead of us. It's always interesting, right? So you look at different industries, and I think about how the airline business got us all used to the kiosk business and then the app business and took us away from that, right? Yeah. Going in, as I mentioned, rails as well. There's some industries, and then there's this lag. Retail went very quickly into this space as well, right? They've had online shopping, they've had self-checkout. Now you see restaurants, and then you'll see convenience stores and garages. Down along the way in the United States, what we refer to as a convenience store is a combination of fuel pump and a small grocer. And they tend to be at the very back end of technology. So I think it's more industry than US, UK. I think the UK has, what I've seen, embraced more of what the changes were in COVID. I've seen more of the QR code still present. Yeah. In the US, we've gone completely back.
Really?
Completely back.
Why do you think that is? It's interesting, isn't it, that that's happened?
Well, I think culturally, another thing is in the U.S. still, we have this cultural difference even prior to the QR code where we still give someone our credit card and they take it away. Yeah, they don't bring machines to the table.
We don't trust anyone.
So I think there's that familiarity or that
and also
behavior.
Service in the States is without being rude to my colleagues here, it's very different, isn't it? I grew up with the Hard Rock. I worked for them for 8 years, and service was really it was a profession. Mm-hmm. It really was a profession, and I wonder if the QR code was a real flight in the face of that, in terms of how people felt about service in the States.
I think I think when there's a concept, right? I'm going out. I know I'm going to pay more to go out.
Yeah.
And if I'm choosing to have a sit-down experience, not a counter experience, there's a level of expectation that someone will greet me, someone will offer me suggestions, someone as the transaction is completed. It's not that, don't bring me, I don't want to touch the machine and buttons, and no, I just want it to go away. When you come back, I think there's also this little, I don't want you to know what I'm going to give you for a tip. Yeah. So. Drop it at the table. And
are you talking about you or
Americans in general? I'll throw the lot in.
and obviously you're over here now. And what I'd love to know is, because one of the things I was reading about you guys and Chris was telling me was about AI, mm-hmm. And how you guys are taking that journey. And since OpenAI and ChatGPT came about, I've been obsessed, and I've been thinking of weird and wonderful ways how that's going to influence hospitality. What do you think? Because it's slowly coming in, right? And it's going to make a big difference. What are you guys doing with Paytronix?
Well, you'll be happy to know that our chief data officer, who is our lead data scientist, has a background from MIT, but was born and raised here in the UK.
Good.
He's actually coming back for his parents' ruby wedding celebration here in a week.
So you only get the best details on this podcast.
Well, listen, I say it as it took someone from the UK to help us with AI in the US.
Good.
But no, Lee's great. But the work that we've been doing has really been about looking at we help our customers. Something unique we do is we have a team of strategy and analytics that really focus in on once we campaign something, what's the results of that campaign? What's happened? And scientifically applying control groups as well. Because oftentimes someone will launch a loyalty scheme and you just don't know. Did I cannibalize my existing business? Did I change any behavior?
And that's often the fear, isn't it? That actually you're going to do that. So some people then don't venture down that road.
Exactly. Most people, if they don't do it properly, will actually end up decreasing their overall revenue. When in fact, what you want to do, so some examples that we use that we've now put into our learning is each one of us has a different day that we will open or react to a message, whether it's a text message or it's an email, and it's a call to action by a retailer, restaurant, whatever brand you're subscribed to.
Yes, lots.
Different people have different philosophies saying, well, Monday's the best day. Thursday's the best day. Oh, for sure, Sunday's the best day, right? What it turns out is they're all wrong. It's every day of the week, but it's different for you and I. Yeah. I may react to something on a Tuesday. You may react to something on a Friday, just because of your behavior and nature. Maybe it's during your commute. Maybe perhaps it's during a downtime that you'll actually, otherwise you just delete. I'll take a look now. I'm more interested. So what we moved in, rather than having to have the client figure that out, because they have thousands of guests, we actually put it into our machine learning tool. And so what we did was we looked at, so if I received an email on a Monday, did nothing with it, Tuesday, did nothing with it, Wednesday, oh wait, I actually came in and used the coupon or bought the promo item. It doesn't have to be an incentive necessarily. It could be, we have a special new menu item. Yeah. Come in and try it. And I did within the next 72 hours. Well, that tells me that Wednesday might be the best day to market to me. So set a campaign. And within our software, the software will decide when to send it to the groups.
Wow.
And we look through that type of data. The other thing that we've been using it with is it's a nurturing campaign. So we know if you come to visit one time, the likelihood of you coming back is about 20%. You come in a second time and you increase that chance. Essentially, by your fourth visit, you're hooked. Now, you don't have to have the fourth visit within a particular time frame because all of the service, it could be that it's a coffee shop, so 4 times in 2 weeks is your number.
Yeah.
It could be that you're more fine dining, so 4 times in 6 months is more the number. But once you get to that fourth visit, we find that the average spend and the frequency. So what we do is we look at the behavior then. Oftentimes people with loyalty programs will run and say, if I haven't seen a person come back in 30 days, pick an arbitrary generic date, let's message them. Well, if I'm only coming to you once every 6 weeks, then that means nothing to me, right? My behavior. And, by the way, if I was coming to you every single day at a coffee shop and you didn't do anything for me for 4 weeks, well, then you really didn't care about me. So you've got to figure out the pattern of the person.
It's true personalization, isn't it? It's basically where I think we all start aware, the movement started. Mm-hmm. I mean, McDonald's obviously were ahead of the game, I think, when they were looking at, and they've just recently brought in their new, in the UK anyway, I don't know about the US, but the loyalty program here is obviously been interesting the last few months. I've seen it, particularly my child using it. But it's really getting under the bonnet of personalization, isn't it? And actually targeting that, so you, not a group of you, which I think is really interesting, and it's paying benefits.
Yes, when we see when we look across our customers base, they're seeing 30 to 40% increase in ticket size or in general revenue, and again that can be made. Mostly it's ticket size, and sometimes it can be frequency if you're changing someone's behavior slightly. Again, offering things, we are seeing a trend within subscriptions. Right now, one of our clients is Panera Bread, which is a multi-thousand unit location, couple thousand locations in the U.S., and they have a coffee subscription, unlimited coffee for $9 a month.
Wow.
Well, what happens when you think you're getting something for free? you go buy more.
Yeah.
Right? So now all of a sudden, their check average, their size, and as it turns out, it's been so profitable for them and so well received that they're actually taking it now to all beverages. That you can get a beverage subscription. Other clients of ours, like PF Chang, which is a Chinese sit-down concept,
Yeah, I know them well.
they are actually tiering their loyalty program, and there's a subscription. So you can actually subscribe to the upper level program, and now you're an insider. So it's not about giving them financial compensation. It's here's the new menu items, here's secrets, here's preferred treatment. And so there's that blend that you see in other industries, right? If you think about, again, the ability to be upgraded in a hotel or on an airline, this is a similar experience. Perhaps you can get that Friday night reservation that is so hard to get.
It's that special feeling, right? It's the one thing I would say hospitality had, the magic dust or the magic thing that we can make people feel. That's what hospitality is about, right? Yeah. And I think if you can do that, like, because when you I'm staying in a hotel tonight, I hope sometimes they bump you up, sometimes they don't. Depends. I think you need a bump up face. That's what I found out. Depends what you look like. So often I don't get it. I've got a face for podcasting. So, but if we can make people feel like that and really spread the joy that we used to do 20 years ago within the four walls, but digitally, it's really powerful.
Well, I think about you think to yourself for a second. I always tell restaurateurs, where are your favorite places to go? And inevitably, everyone thinks about a place where you're known.
Yeah.
You go in, they recognize you. There's a group of people that may go there regularly. There's something about it that's familiar. You know what to expect, the quality of the product. Person recognizes you, perhaps. As we are shifting in our behavior, and we're seeing labor challenges, frankly, both here and the U.S., the likelihood of seeing that same person is dwindling. And so you have to find ways to allow technology not to be, I would say, just this side of creepy.
That's where I spend my life, Charles. This side of creepy.
Just this side. It's really important that you feel recognized for what you're spending and appreciated by the brand, but not that they're intruding.
Yeah. And it's a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. And I actually think that, I think you've used the word trained before. I think we've been trained to actually see the benefit in that, where we used to feel like we were being spammed, I suppose, that's one of the words people would use. Actually, now people are looking to that call to action to drive their behavior, and so I am triggered a lot into Nike and Apple. They're two of my favorite brands, and I'm triggered a lot into purchases purely because they nudge me on a weekly basis or whatever my frequency is. Now you've got me thinking, what is my frequency? Who are you?
Yeah.
You're gonna pull off a mask like Scooby-Doo, but
it's so fascinating that, like you said, we have the tools. We're the originators of hospitality.
Yeah.
And all these other industries weren't noted for that. There were things that they were noted for, but over time, I think in some ways they've used technology to help us. No one person, as an example, I'm a very frequent Delta flyer. No one person at Delta knows my face, but I feel very well taken care of because of the experience I get through the technology. The upgrade, the special treatment, hey, we've got this insider opportunity for you, but there isn't a human that I know Pete.
That would be weird, right?
It would be very weird.
I know the baggage handler. I see him every time.
Exactly.
Same guy. And what's interesting, actually, that's for our generation, I'm not putting you in my bracket, but I'll say for my generation, this is a new thing for me, as in, I'm growing up with it, but it's a learning for me. But the next generation that come up beneath us, and the one behind that especially, this will be expected, not anything else, right?
So I use the example. So yes, I struggle with delivery services. And the reason I say that is I still am of that generation where I watched my, the greatest generation, right, rinse out their tinfoil. I'm not there, but I can't quite wrap my head around a $9 delivery fee for a $15 product. And my nieces were visiting us and back in November around the U.S. Thanksgiving, and all of a sudden there was a delivery. Doorbell rang, and one of my nieces went to the door, and they're in their mid-20s. They live in New York City, and I said, thank you. And I said, well, what did you order? And they said, well, we wanted a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. I said, well, we have ice cream in the freezer. I said, but not the right kind. So on a $6 carton, they paid $9 delivery. It just didn't make any sense to me. To them, they couldn't understand
why you had a problem.
why I had a problem.
Yeah.
So I do believe there's going to be generational shift.
Yeah, for sure. And we were talking before about, I was in a session with a client before this, talking about soft skills in these kids, and talking about actually the fact that tech has changed the way this generation are going to grow up. They're used to interaction is less. Soft skills, that what me and you require to sell to people and to meet people and create networks is almost less required, purely because the functionality they have at their fingertips. But it's still a gap, right? So it's really interesting. And on that, what kind of problems are you seeing from your customers? I mean, do you have like an evergreen issue that you're always coming up against when you're meeting brands? Is there something that you think, God, one day this will go away?
I don't know if there's one particular. I would say it's more of a theme of oftentimes people just don't know what to do to get started.
Someone called it data waterboarding the other day. I'm not sure if that's correct thing to say, but as in they just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I think oftentimes there's that, well, I don't know what program to run. I don't know how to get started. I don't know the best way to get this out there without it just being another thing that somebody has to have. And then, as you said, once you start getting that information and data, what do I do next? Right. So that is what we try to do with a combination of the software with the artificial intelligence, is to help with some of those things. As an example, with our online ordering, a lot of companies will, if you fill your basket and you're missing a particular category, oftentimes for restaurants it's dessert, right? Let's try to do a quick upsell. Well, not everybody wants dessert.
Yeah.
So what we found is we're actually more effective when at the end of your transaction, you filled your cart, you go to checkout, we pop up a screen that will show you something you purchased in the past that isn't currently in the cart. And we see a better acceptance of that by almost 50%. We'll say, yeah, I'll opt into it. I forgot about it. Or I like it, I just didn't think, versus the don't keep bringing up, I don't want a slice of pie.
What about this? Yeah. And it's that, because that in real life, back into with a physical menu is what would happen, right? You would see that, think, oh, remember we had that last time, love, and you'd buy that. So yeah, it's really interesting. And when I was in the States, I was taught about raving fans. It was a thing I was brought up on in Hard Rock, and if everyone hasn't read the book, read the book.
Yes.
It's very good. And raving fans are the golden goose of business. I think, the people that will do your work for you, will go out and shout for you. And what you're doing with loyalty is quite interesting. And I think that how are you enabling that for your customers? How are you enabling that raving fan mentality so they can actually go out and become so loyal in terms of subscribing, sharing, buying with you guys? How are Paytronix doing that?
So I think there's been again at the when you see the results across the various companies that we have, there's a drive, I think, for then their competitors to want to be like them, emulate their experience. And we see this often between our national chains and our regional chains, that the regionals are trying to defend their spend and their buy. And they want to create their raving fans, and they want to create at the consumer level. So each one of the brands are trying to find ways to keep that individual in a very competitive market. And so it depends on, like I was saying, depending upon the experience, it could be, again, special seating. It could be access to insider information, new menus. It could be that you're going to introduce a new high-end tequila or whiskey, and you know who's purchased that in the past.
Yeah.
So you market to those people. You don't do a blanket market, because most people just, we did this with one of our coffee chains. As it turns out, I don't know how much of it is in the United States, maybe not here in the UK, pumpkin spice is the fall flavor.
Yeah.
It's ubiquitous.
It's a US thing.
Okay. It's a US thing. Okay.
I don't know. People might be listening going, he's lying, but
so it's such a phenomenon.
What is it?
There. It's horrible.
Yeah,
it's
definitely
this horrible flavoring.
Is it really big?
Pumpkin spice. It is the bestseller at the Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts chain. I mean, every major chain. And we work with one, Caribou, who said, what about this? What that we should be doing? Everyone does it, right? So it's just we're all following along. Well, it turns out a third of the people absolutely detest pumpkin spice, and so they don't want to hear about it. That's not going to change their behavior. So what we actually figured out from the purchase data is that it's basically a third. A third detest it. A third are your raving fans.
Yeah.
and just will go out there and tell everyone they know, this is the best pumpkin spice latte I've ever had in my life. You have to go there. And they'll drag their friends, right? You must. And then the other third's neutral, as if,
depends how drunk I am.
Right. So at what we determined was, how do you drive that first third back into raving fans, even when it's pumpkin spice? As soon as you stop the pumpkin spice promotion, they sent out a note saying, "Ding dong, the witch is dead. It's safe to come back." and people actually reacted to that.
Of course,
they're like, "Oh."
Again, because it's personable, right? And because it's you're thinking it before it arrives, and I think that's the magic of it. And it's not easy. I mean, AI and all of this stuff, it's been built for a reason, because it's trying to replace, I suppose, or put human behaviour on an automated scale, which is a challenge. And we and you were on a panel actually back in, shall we say, last autumn, at the oh my God, Bar and Tech Show.
Yes.
There we go, in the Excel. And we were talking about, someone asked us from the audience, what's the next steps for hospitality? And I think both of us said automation. Yeah. Automation needs to keep happening, and I'm obsessed with it. I think really interesting listening to you today, talking to people last week about marketing automation and nudges and campaigns. Where do you see it going in the next, is it something that's going to become more and more? And what else do you think we can automate? Where do you think we are? Because it's quite a general thing, isn't it? Because someone the other week was talking about robots in the restaurants. I don't know how the Americans feel about robots, but they're here. They're in the Hard Rock Hotel in Marble Arch.
Okay.
Working. You can go meet them later if you want.
No. I would say that as we look at automation, you're right. There's so many different places. So there is a sushi concept that operates in the U.S. that it's just a conveyor belt.
Yes.
Right? That just goes around. So that's one form of minor automation, right? I can just literally pick what I want.
You're in charge.
You're in charge.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this with the kiosk, right? That's a level of automation. Third-party delivery in bringing your device, right, to life, being the one that now the restaurant didn't invest in any tech or hardware. They just have a website or an app that you can use. I think you're seeing the trend with beverages. Coca-Cola certainly is doing some really interesting things with its fountain and QR codes. And again, in ways in which they're trying to not only dispense, but not be abusive, right? So people can't go up and go 4 or 5 times.
Yes,
right?
I always wondered, we used to do the free refills at the Hard Rock. That was the manual way of doing it, but yeah.
Yeah. And so I think we're going to start to see areas like that. I wouldn't be shocked if a concept like BrewDog that we're sitting in today adopts a thing where you could even pour your own pint.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you could go up again, QR code it, you could, or preload it, and then just boom, and away you go.
And there's a kiosk on wheels here. I don't know if you saw if Chris
upstairs.
Upstairs there's a kiosk on wheels, and they're basically, the idea is to put it where the pain point is, which is, I think, and it's incredibly simple thinking, but automated. It takes things that often seem complex when you're trying to run a former operator. You've got to have this person here, aces in places they used to call it, and having staff everywhere. But then you think about it, we can keep the humans doing what they do, enable them to do better, whilst taking away those pain points, and it's becoming more and more visible. I think it's a good thing.
Again, you think of the combinations of things from if before online reservations, right? You dialed a phone, hopefully somebody answered. If they did, you do several attempts.
Yeah.
And there may be several people listening to the podcast thinking, "Oh my God, how old is he?" Before there were reservations kits before apps and online. But you look at that, or you look at if you walked up to to a host, and you just said, "Hey, I need a table," and they would say, "Well, you'll have to wait around here." Well, no, now let me text you. Go walk the neighborhood, and we'll let you know, right? Servers. When I first started, everything was on duplicate paper, right? Yeah. And then POS comes along and helps that, and then kitchen systems come, and the expediter no longer is using tickets in a speed rail. They're using a screen to understand what's happening in the stations. All those steps along the way have created automation points, right? That when I always say, technology in any operation is really just a bullhorn. It's just going to make whatever you're saying louder. So if you've got a good operation, it'll help smooth it over. But if it's bad, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
So that screen that's flashing red because the prep station is running behind, that tech didn't help you other than get more frustrated.
It just makes you feel bad.
Right, exactly.
You are bad. Yeah. Exactly. It's interesting because you must, because I always talk about adoption with tech, and often people in boardrooms buy it, and then the kids on the floor use it, and often there's a gap in between, right? And landing it is a big issue. And I think you experienced that today probably, where the actual operational ease of ordering some food in a restaurant you chose to go in and buy, you couldn't do, so you left. Yeah. And are you seeing? Do you see a lot of that still? Are you because you obviously travel a lot, and you're around the world.
Yeah, I see it all the time. The person I feel the worst for is the flight attendant on the plane when the Wi-Fi doesn't work. Everyone is so frustrated. And that poor individual is not a technology expert, right? They're not about to.
Right there, they don't want to be anything. They just want to be gone.
The only thing they could say to you and do is, we're going to turn it off and turn it back on again.
Oh dear. My dad used to run a TV company back in the 80s, and that was his fix for everything.
And so I think that's so true. If the staff isn't trained well, if they aren't armed and understand, they're being looked to when the technology fails. And so they have to have a good understanding of what you're using. Think about the backup plan to that as well. And again, if you can marry the technology to your operations in a way that it just feels good for the employee and the guest, it isn't something that's foreign to the experience, you know? I'm not sure, like your example of the robots, if I'm ready for having a human come up and take my order, or even a QR code. Let's say I successfully can execute a QR code.
You'll get there.
And this little white robot comes out with a tray.
Yes, that's exactly what they are. If they're at the thing we did together, the trade show, I'm pretty sure they were floating about that day.
They were. Well, yeah,
You're not there yet.
I'm not there yet.
It's interesting because I saw Bo Parron, who Slim Chickens in the UK. They've been trialing it, and then I was in the Hard Rock Hotel, which I believe is a franchise of the Hard Rock corporate, and they had all the kids on the floor doing their thing with their pins, which I love, and all that kind of stuff. And then they had two of these, they look like cats. They had cats' faces on. They were. I think they were basically running food or clearing, or they were like tray robots. And I asked the waiter, I said, what's it like? I said, because you guys are so experiential. And he said it, and he said to me, it adds to the experience. He said, the kids love them. He goes there. And I was thinking, they probably do. But sure, I mean, I suppose on a flat surface and all that, it makes sense, right? But for most people, restaurants aren't that easy to put. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it will become something that we'll see regularly?
I think it's going to have to be a little bit for a period of time until costs.
Yeah.
And again, think through the build out. So I can remember, again, introducing point of sale to restaurants that didn't have it, and you had to think about the wires you have to pull through the wall and the location of these things. Now think about robots and how big they are. Charging stations.
The fact we're even talking about it's a bit weird.
Yeah. So I think for a period it'll remain a unique experience, and you'll see them in places where there are people who have money to invest in them.
Yes.
Right. And can certainly pivot if that's not working to the more traditional service model. I think as the technology, as all technology changes, evolves, and decreases in price, then you could start to see some of that use case later on. I don't know in particular, because you're still going to have obviously a human loading the tray. I say that with in 10 years.
The tray's got a name, you know. Here, it's not just a robot. It's got feelings.
Well, so Domino's experimented in the U.S. with driverless delivery.
How did that go? I mean,
I think it's still happening in a few markets, but the driverless experience has been in the U.S. is a different state by state from a regulatory perspective. So it's not something you can just pop onto the roads. There's still some governmental challenge to having no driver.
Well, each state is its own government, as I understand, in the States, right? Yeah. Let's not get into that. It's not. We've only got a few minutes left. And what about, last question really before I ask you what you think for the future, tech stacks in general, because you fit into a tech stack. How do you feel that brands are managing those types of their tech stack? Do you think there's a plan? Do you think are you going in most of the time it's plug and play and people are just kind of grabbing stuff they need to grab, or do you think there seems to be more of a plan now at the moment with I suppose with larger enterprise brands?
With larger enterprise brands, there's definitely planning involved. As they have to think about again how to take it out to market and execute on it. And our larger brands will be thinking about supply chain issues and challenges. So depending upon how they're trying to market to the individual, what are they trying to drive behaviorally? I think when you get into a mid-market operator, it's best to try to narrow down the number of providers, because the more providers you have, obviously, the more management over the relationships are going to be occurring. And you want, at the end of the day, you don't want your guest to know this company did your app, this company did your pause, this company does your kitchen, all of a sudden it doesn't matter. And I always say when someone asks me about Paytronix, they'll go, "I've never heard of you," and I said, "Then we've done a really good job."
Yeah.
If you're not in the industry, if you're just a consumer, all you know is you had a great experience at, and we can list the brands that they do it. In fact, a study just came out from USA Today that we are, of the top 25 restaurant, we power 12 of the 25 most interesting loyalty programs in the US. And that's great, and no one knows it.
The best tech is the silent tech,
right? That's the idea, is that it's the brand that you most care about. And so I think when people look at their tech stack, they should be thinking about how does it work together so that the guest truly just believes it's the brand.
I don't know if you know, but I mean, I'm sure you are aware, but it's quite noisy in the UK. I would say that the hospitality tech world is quite noisy. It feels, especially in the pandemic, there was a lot of tech that arrived, obviously for needs, but it feels noisy. I mean, I work with a lot of them, right? Tech on Toast works with a lot of them, and it's really interesting to see that actually sometimes maybe that's not the case in the UK. Maybe maybe it is a bit shouty, and maybe we need to be a bit more like that. Because I think the enterprise brands, you deliberately behave like that, right? You just want to make them work because A, they're valuable for you, and B, it's absolutely valuable for the guests that they experience that.
Yeah, and I think as again, no matter the size of the operator, technology can help to level the playing field.
Yeah.
Right. So if you've got a really good product and you have 4 or 5 locations, you can play like the 1,000-unit chain if you pick the right tech stack. It's investing and understanding that there can be a return on the investment, and don't just believe that you're small and can't get in there and do something. Actually think through what it is that you can do, and how as the consumer's walking down the street or thumbing through their phone, how do you grab their attention? How do you make sure that, again, we come back to what you asked earlier, how to take that consumer to a raving fan?
And that it's challenging for the SMB, right? Because the small business will think, all this tech is built for the enterprise guys. This is all built for. But actually, if they really investigate and listen to this content and get involved, the opportunity is for everybody, isn't it? It
Absolutely.
Really is. You're right. It is. It really brings everybody into the same, because we're all competing with the handset. Yes. Aren't we? All restaurants are competing with a handset, and it's changed a lot, because it used to be on your front menu. Remember, it used to be really important that your menu was in a brass, looking all pretty with it all lit up. I mean, I'm a Hard Rock boy, so we used to be polishing that brass every night. But that is still important on arrival. But the reality is, they've already made their decision based in their home or on their commute or wherever they were that day. So you are entirely right. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a way to use. You think about it. So here I am, back in London, my 3rd time this year, in the last 12 months, and I still look for sources to recommend locations, not just the people I know, but the technology. And so you think about, particularly in communities where you're going to see tourism, you've got to think through how to, if you're an independent, small restaurant, how do you get onto the radar screen?
It's brilliant. And I really want to. I was talking to a chap last week who called Joel, who owns something called eMenu now, and they built this bit of tech that connects with legacy tech. So anything, really EPOS that you've never heard of, and not because they're being quiet, you've just never heard of them. And he was saying, because he wanted the mom and pop restaurants to be part of the digital ecosystem. While that sounds like a challenging business, it is interesting that to get everyone to truly play their part in hospitality will be really exciting, because that drags everybody up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's so many things that you can do with it. Just, again, going back to just think about your operations. Because if you try to do something and you go, I'm just going to put it out there because we power the Nando's program, and it's fantastic, but that's for their brand.
Yeah.
And it works well for them, and they've developed a thing. Not to say parts can't work for other brands, but you really should step back and look at your own operation and brand to determine what's the right path.
Perfect. It's a nice way to end. And what about the future? I mean, you're here for your 3rd visit in London. I'm sure you'll be coming more. Are you coming for the trade shows later in the year?
I will be. Actually, probably be back here in May as well. hopefully a little bit better weather. I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I can't promise that. You're from Boston. You've got the same thing.
We have the same thing. We just have more snow on the ground.
Yeah,
You're right.
that's what it is.
It's pretty much.
And what about hospitality in general? What do you think is going to happen? I mean, I know it's a bit of an open question, but what do you see for the future?
Well, I think we've seen a trend not only in technology, but in service and in food, frankly. So I think you're going to continue to see a shift where the service models get blended a bit. So you're going to see a little bit of, again, it could be I order through technology, but there's a runner who brings the food out. Or you could use your robot example where they're going to bring it out later. But I think you're just going to start to see technology weave more and more. Now, we've done this before, too, where in the lead up to the bubble in the 1990s and all the tech running around, there were a number of options out there, and you see a consolidation happen.
Yeah.
We've seen that second round, probably now the third round, of a bunch of new tech come on scene, particularly around pay at the table and those things. And because of what you faced here in the UK with governmental regulation on that, a bunch of companies have come and gone.
Yeah.
Within this time that I've been visiting since 21.
I thought you said been speaking. I said
no. Even within the time, probably 2 or 3 have already closed shop.
But no, it's very true. I think consolidation is happening as we speak right now. I know a lot of the guys are talking and there's some merging going on. But look, Charles, it's great. What have you got planned for the rest of your stay in London? How long are you going back tomorrow, is it? Or?
No, going back on Friday. A couple more meetings and a chance to go visit some of our clients. So it's exciting.
You're going to have some chicken by the sounds of it.
Probably going to have some chicken, yes.
That's great. That was Charles Gray, everybody. Thank you for coming on the Tech on Tables podcast. Say goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.